The fluorescent lights in the Boston Museum of Natural History basement flickered in their familiar 4:15 rhythm, casting shadows across metal filing cabinets that held more dust than documented history. Emma Carson sat hunched over a desk, scarred by decades of bureaucratic indifference, squinting at a 1952 procurement ledger through reading glasses she was too stubborn to upgrade. Her fingers, stiff from December cold and 3 hours of cramped notation, hovered over faded ink that documented purchases no living person cared about. The heating system rattled somewhere behind plaster walls, losing its battle against New England winter. She pulled her cardigan tighter, the same threadbare cardigan she'd worn since graduate school, back when she believed archival work meant uncovering forgotten truths rather than cataloging institutional apathy. Her phone buzzed against the desk. She ignored it. The museum's annual inventory deadline loomed, and her supervisor, Gerald, had made crystal clear that missing another deadline meant unemployment. The phone buzzed again, then again, insistent as a wasp trapped against glass. Emma grabbed it, thumb poised over the decline button, ready to silence whatever robocall had decided to interrupt the last shred of her concentration. But the screen read, "Unknown number, Vermont." Her thumb hesitated. Nobody she knew lived in Vermont. Nobody called her at all except her landlord when rent came late, which it had, twice this year, once last month. She answered, voice flat with exhaustion and low-grade irritation masquerading as professionalism. A male voice emerged, older, carrying the careful pronunciation of someone who'd spent a lifetime reading legal documents aloud in wood-paneled offices. "Miss Carson? Miss Emma Carson?" Her spine straightened involuntarily. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Robert Mitchell. I'm an attorney with Mitchell and Associates in Frost Hollow, Vermont. I've been trying to reach you for 3 days." Emma's mind raced through possibilities. None of them good. Debt collectors didn't usually identify themselves as attorneys in small Vermont towns. "I don't know anyone in Vermont." "No, but your great-aunt Catherine Hartwell knew you." The name landed like a stone dropped into still water, ripples spreading through memory. Catherine, the family ghost. The aunt who disappeared into mountains decades ago and never returned. The one who sent a card when Emma was born but never visited. The one her mother refused to discuss, except in fragments. She chose that house over family, locked herself away like some kind of hermit. Your grandmother tried to reach out for years, but Catherine wanted nothing to do with us. Emma's throat constricted. Did something happen to her? "Miss Hartwell passed away 2 weeks ago. I apologize for the delay in reaching you. The roads have been difficult, and locating your current contact information took some time." The basement suddenly felt smaller. The air thinner. Emma had barely known Catherine existed beyond her mother's bitter whispers, yet death always carved out space, even for strangers. "I see. I'm sorry to hear that." Robert's voice softened, took on a different quality, something between sympathy and urgency. "Miss Carson, your great-aunt left you something. Her estate. The entirety of it, actually." Emma blinked, the words refusing to arrange themselves into meaning. "I'm sorry, what?" "You're the sole beneficiary of Catherine Hartwell's will. I need you to come to Frost Hollow as soon as possible to review the documents and take possession of the property." Property. The word hung in the stale basement air. What kind of property? "The Hartwell estate. It's a Victorian mansion on 12 acres at the edge of town. Miss Hartwell was quite insistent that you receive it. There are papers you need to sign, and some items she wanted personally delivered to you." The pause that followed carried weight Emma couldn't yet decode. The property and its contents are worth approximately $280 million. The procurement ledger blurred. Emma's hand tightened on the phone. That's not... I understand this is shocking, but I assure you it's quite real. Miss Hartwell was very clear about her wishes. She followed your life, Miss Carson. She knew you'd become an archivist. She seemed to find that fitting." Emma looked around the basement, water-stained ceiling tiles, boxes of unsorted archives she'd been cataloging for 8 months at barely above minimum wage, the space heater that hadn't worked since October. She thought about her studio apartment in Alston with its perpetually dripping faucet and neighbors who screamed at 2 in the morning. She thought about the $47 in her checking account and the credit card she'd maxed buying groceries last week. She thought about Lily, When do you need me there? As soon as you can manage. I understand it's Christmas Eve, but the weather forecast calls for a significant snowstorm tomorrow. If you can come today, I can meet you at my office. Otherwise, we may have to wait until after the holiday, possibly longer if the roads close. Emma glanced at the clock. 4:23. She could grab Lily from the neighbor's apartment, pack a bag, be on the road by 5:30. The alternative was spending Christmas in that apartment, eating the frozen lasagna she'd found on clearance, watching her 9-year-old daughter pretend to be excited about the 3 small gifts Emma had wrapped in newspaper because wrapping paper cost money. Her mother was in Florida with her new husband. The invitation extended with such obvious reluctance that Emma had declined. That was her Christmas. Solitude, scarcity, and the crushing weight of failing to provide the life her daughter deserved. I can leave in an hour. Excellent. Drive carefully, Miss Carson. The mountain roads can be treacherous in weather like this. I'll text you the address. She hung up, sat motionless for a long minute, phone still pressed to her ear like she could hold on to the impossible words a little longer. Then she grabbed her coat, shoved her laptop and notebook into her worn canvas bag, and climbed the narrow stairs out of the basement for what she didn't yet know would be the last time. Gerald was already gone for the holiday. She left a note on his desk. Family emergency, back after Christmas. The lie felt true enough. By 5:45, Emma stood in the doorway of Mrs. Rodriguez's apartment, 3 doors down from her own, watching Lily's face transform as she processed the news. The girl sat cross-legged on the worn carpet, backpack already half-packed because Emma had texted ahead. 9 years old, elbows and wild dark curls, and questions that never stopped coming. An inheritance? Like in books? Emma knelt, met her daughter's eyes, green like Emma's own, but brighter somehow, not yet dimmed by the arithmetic of poverty. Yes, baby. From my great-aunt Catherine, the one Grandma doesn't like to talk about. Lily's brow furrowed in that way that meant her considerable brain was processing, connecting dots. The one who lived in the big house in the mountains? Emma blinked. How did you know that? Lily shrugged, returned to packing. You talk in your sleep sometimes. You said her name once. Catherine in the mountains. It sounded like a fairy tale. Something in Emma's chest cracked open. Her daughter had been listening to unconscious murmurs and building stories from fragments. We're driving there tonight, before the storm hits. Lily zipped the backpack with decisive finality, stood, shouldered the weight like a soldier preparing for deployment. Are we going on an adventure, Mom? Emma's laugh came out shaky. I think so, honey. I think maybe we are. The drive north should have taken 4 hours. It took 6. Emma's 12-year-old Honda Civic, transmission rebuilt by her own hands in a borrowed garage last summer, shuddered against the wind as snow began to fall north of Concord. Light flurries at first, dancing across the windshield like confused moths. But within 20 miles, the flurries thickened into a steady curtain of white that swallowed the highway ahead. Lily sat in the passenger seat, small hands wrapped around Emma's phone, eyes fixed on the GPS as if she could navigate them safely through force of will. The heater wheezed, doing its best. Emma hunched forward, knuckles white on the steering wheel, every muscle tensed against the pull of wind and ice. Mom, the GPS says, take exit 17 in 2 miles. Emma could barely see 2 car lengths ahead. Okay, baby, keep watching for the sign. The interstate gave way to the smaller state routes that wound through pine forests heavy with accumulating snow. Towns grew farther apart. Houses became sparse, then disappeared entirely. The roads narrowed. Emma's headlights carved weak tunnels through the blizzard, revealing only swirling white and occasional ghostly trees bent under their frozen burden. Lily broke the silence with the question Emma had been expecting. Mom, why did Great-Aunt Catherine leave us everything if she never met us? Emma kept her eyes on the road, chose words carefully. I don't know, honey. My mother, your grandmother, didn't talk about her much. They had some kind of falling out years ago before I was born. Was she mean? I don't think so. I think she made choices Grandma didn't understand. Sometimes families break apart over things like that. The car slid slightly on a curve. Emma's mechanic instincts took over. Ease off the wow, ma'am. Don't brake hard. Let the tires find purchase. The Honda straightened. Lily didn't flinch, just kept watching the GPS like it was her assigned duty post. What kind of choices? Emma thought about her mother's fragments. the bitterness that clung to Catherine's name. I think she chose her work over family. Or maybe she chose something else her family thought was more important than them. The pause stretched. Sometimes people have to make hard decisions, and there's no right answer. Lily absorbed this, turning it over in that internal space where she processed the world's complications. Do you think we'll understand when we get there? Emma hopes so. Maybe that's why she left everything to us. Maybe she wants us to understand. The sign materialized through the snow. Frost Hollow, 23 miles. 23 miles felt like 100. Emma's hands ached from gripping the wheel. Lily had gone quiet, watching the white world slide past, and Emma wondered what her daughter was thinking. Whether she was scared, excited, or performing the same mental calculus Emma herself was running. $280 million. The number didn't feel real. Numbers that large belonged to other people's lives. But so did Victorian mansions and great-aunts who followed your life from a distance. Another sign emerged. Welcome to Frost Hollow, population 847. The town materialized like something from a snow globe. Main Street stretching maybe 6 blocks, lined with brick buildings that sagged under winter's weight. A church steeple rose against the dark sky. Yellow lights glowed in shop windows. A diner, a general store, a post office. But most buildings stood dark, windows empty or boarded. This was a town that had seen better days and was still waiting for them to return. Lily pressed her face to the window. Mom, it's so small. Emma followed the GPS onto a narrow side street, past a closed hardware store in an empty lot, until the attorney's office appeared. Mitchell and Associates, a light burning in the front window. She parked, grabbed her bag, and they ran through the snow to the door. Inside, warmth wrapped around them. The office was cramped with filing cabinets and bookshelves stuffed with legal volumes. A man in his late 60s rose from behind a desk, extending his hand. Wire-rimmed glasses, wool cardigan over button-down shirt, the kind of face that had seen enough of life to be kind about it. Miss Carson, thank you for making the drive in this weather. I'm Robert Mitchell. Emma shook his hand, her fingers still numb. Please call me Emma. This is my daughter, Lily. Robert's expression softened as he looked at Lily, something passing across his features that Emma couldn't quite read. Hello, Lily. Your great-great-aunt Catherine hoped very much that you'd come. Lily's eyes widened. She knew about me? She knew about both of you. Robert gestured to leather chairs across from his desk. Please sit. Coffee? You look like you need it. Emma sank into the chair, suddenly aware of her exhaustion. God, yes. He poured from a percolator, strong and black, and Emma wrapped both hands around the mug, letting heat seep into her bones. Robert settled behind his desk, pulled out a manila folder with the careful ceremony of someone about to change lives. I'll try to keep this brief. Catherine Hartwell was my client for 41 years. I handled her affairs, her investments, her taxes. She was a very private woman, but she was also very specific about her wishes. He slid a document across the desk. Emma scanned it, legal language swimming before tired eyes, but certain phrases jumped out. Sole beneficiary, all property real and personal, the Hartwell estate and all structures thereon, complete in unconditional ownership. I don't understand. Why us? I never even met her. Robert leaned back, fingers steepled. Catherine never explained her reasoning to me directly, but I can tell you this, she followed your life. She had newspaper clippings about your academic achievements, your graduation from college, your work at various museums. She knew you'd become an archivist. She knew about Lily. He pulled out another envelope, sealed with red wax. She left you this letter. She insisted I give it to you personally. She wanted you to read it in Frost Hollow. Emma took the envelope carefully. Thick paper, expensive. Her name written in elegant cursive. For Emma Carson, when she arrives. The wax seal bore an imprint she couldn't quite make out in the dim light. Some kind of bird, maybe. Wings spread. Can I open it now? You can, though Catherine suggested you might want to read it at the house. But the choice is yours. Emma set the letter down, suddenly afraid of what it might contain. Tell me about the house first. Robert nodded. The Hartwell estate was built in 1887 by your great-great-great-grandfather, Jonathan Hartwell. Timber and railroad fortune. The house has been in your family ever since. 22 rooms, Victorian architecture, very well preserved. Catherine lived there alone for the last 45 years. Alone, Emma repeated. For 45 years? She had help, of course. A woman named Maggie Chen came weekly to clean and shop. But yes, Catherine lived there by herself. She rarely came into town. Lily's small voice cut in. That sounds lonely. Robert's expression softened further. Perhaps, or perhaps she was content. She read extensively, she wrote letters, she maintained the property immaculately. Some people need solitude the way others need company. He pulled out a set of keys on a silver ring. These are for the house, front door, back door, and several others. There's also a key to the gate. The property is fenced. Emma took the keys, heavy and old-fashioned, the kind that looked like they belonged in period dramas. What about utilities? Everything's current. Heat, electricity, phone line, all active. I've been maintaining the accounts from Catherine's estate funds. You'll need to transfer them to your name. But for tonight, everything should be functional. You're saying Emma can stay there tonight. It's your house now, Emma. You can do whatever you want with it. He paused. Though I should mention several parties have expressed interest in purchasing the property. The land alone is worth quite a bit. I haven't even seen it yet. Something protective flared in Emma's chest, surprising her with its intensity. Of course. I apologize. Robert stood, pulling on a heavy coat. I'll drive out ahead of you and open the gate. The house is about 4 miles north of town. Stay on Route 7. You'll see the iron fence on your left. It's the only property out that way. 20 minutes later, Emma followed Robert's truck through the blizzard, Lily silent beside her, both of them leaning forward as if they could will better visibility through the windshield. The road climbed steadily, leaving town behind. Pine trees crowded close, branches bent under snow's weight, and Emma caught glimpses of them like frozen sentinels guarding secrets. Then Robert's brake lights flared. He turned left, and Emma followed. An iron fence appeared, tall and Gothic with spear-point finials. Robert got out, unlocked a massive gate that swung open on hinges that made no sound. He waved them through. The driveway curved through trees for what felt like half a mile. Then the forest opened up, and Emma's breath caught. Lily's gasp was audible. Mom, Mom. The mansion rose before them like something from a fever dream or a storybook illustration come to terrible, magnificent life. 3 stories of Victorian excess, all turrets and gables and wraparound porches painted in deep grays and blacks that made it look carved from the storm itself. Snow covered every surface, the peaked roofs, the widow's walk, the ornate railings. Windows glowed with soft yellow light in the downstairs rooms, but the upper floors were dark, their windows like closed eyes. The whole structure seemed to lean slightly forward, watching their approach. It's a castle, Lily whispered. Mom, is this really ours? Emma couldn't answer. Her throat had closed around something that felt like fear and wonder, and the crushing weight of responsibility she hadn't asked for. Robert parked and hurried to Emma's window, leaning down. I've turned on the lights downstairs and checked the furnace. Everything's working. There's firewood on the back porch if you want fires. He pressed a business card into her hand. My cell number's on there. Call if you need anything, though service can be spotty out here. You're leaving? Emma tried to keep panic from her voice. I'm 5 minutes down the road in town. You'll be fine. The house is solid, and the storm's supposed to break by morning. He smiled kindly, and for the first time, Emma understood that this man had cared about Catherine, had perhaps been the only person in this town who knew her. Welcome home, Emma. He climbed back into his truck and drove away, taillights disappearing into swirling snow. Emma sat in her idling car, engine running, staring at the mansion. Wind howled around them, shaking the Honda on its frame. She could turn around right now, drive back to town, find a motel that would take her credit card, come back in daylight when the storm had passed and everything looked less like a Gothic novel. But Lily's hand found hers, small and warm. Mom, we're here. We made it. Let's go inside. Emma looked at her daughter, 9 years old, braver than Emma had ever been, and nodded. She grabbed her bag, tucked Catherine's letter inside her coat to keep it dry, and together they ran for the front porch. The steps groaned under their boots. The porch was massive, wrapping around the entire front with ornate woodwork and hanging baskets that swayed in the wind. The front door was solid oak, 8 feet tall, with stained glass panels depicting birds in flight. The same phoenix symbol from the letter's wax seal, Emma realized now. She fumbled with the keys until she found the right one. It turned smoothly, well-oiled. The door swung open. Warmth rushed out to meet them, like an embrace. Emma and Lily stepped inside and closed the door, shutting out the storm. For a moment, they just stood there, dripping melted snow onto a Persian rug, trying to process what they were seeing. The foyer stretched before them, easily 20 feet to the far wall. A grand staircase curved upward to the second floor, its banister carved mahogany that gleamed in soft light. To the left, through an arched doorway, a parlor with furniture covered in white sheets. To the right, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. Straight ahead, a hallway led deeper into the house. And above it all, a crystal chandelier hung from a medallion ceiling, its facets catching light and throwing rainbows across walls. Everything was immaculate. No dust, no cobwebs, no signs of neglect. The floors gleamed. The air smelled of lemon polish and something floral. Lavender, maybe. Lily's whisper echoed. "Mom, this can't be real." Emma set her bag down, moved slowly into the parlor. She pulled the sheet off a sofa, revealing burgundy velvet upholstery with buttons like jewels. A fireplace dominated one wall, its mantel crowded with photographs in silver frames. Emma moved closer, studying faces frozen in time. A young woman in 1940s dress standing beside a soldier. An older couple, stern-faced and formal. A little girl with dark curls holding a doll. And then one that made her stop breathing. A woman in her 70s, silver-haired and sharp-eyed, standing in front of this very house. Catherine. Emma picked up the frame, studied her great-aunt's face. There was something fierce in her expression, something that refused to apologize or explain. She looked like someone who'd made difficult choices and lived with them. Emma felt a strange kinship with that face, that defiance. Lily appeared beside her, drawn to the library. "Mom, look at all the books." The room was floor-to-ceiling shelves organized with obvious care. Emma ran her fingers along spines. History, literature, art, biography. Many were old leather-bound volumes with gold lettering, but there were newer books too, bestsellers from recent years. Catherine had kept reading, kept engaged with the world, even in her solitude. They moved through the dining room where a table long enough to seat 16 sat under another chandelier. The kitchen was surprisingly modern, updated probably in the last decade with granite counters and stainless appliances. A note on the counter, handwritten in careful script. "Welcome, Emma and Lily. I stocked the refrigerator and pantry. Coffee is in the cupboard. Fresh cookies in the jar." Maggie, Lily found the cookie jar, lifted the lid. Chocolate chip. "Mom, they're still warm." Tears pricked Emma's eyes. A stranger had welcomed them more warmly than anyone had in months. Someone had thought about their comfort, about a 9-year-old girl arriving hungry and cold. Someone had cared. Emma opened the refrigerator, fully stocked. Milk, eggs, bread, cheese, fresh vegetables, a roasted chicken. The pantry held coffee, tea, pasta, canned goods, enough to last weeks. Lily munched a cookie, eyes wide. "Mom, can we stay here? Please?" Emma pulled her daughter close. "I don't know yet, baby. This is all very complicated. But it's ours, right? The lawyer said so. Legally, yes. But there's a lot we need to figure out." She smoothed Lily's wild curls. "For tonight, though?" "Yes. Tonight this is home." They explored the first floor together, Lily darting from room to room with increasing excitement. A music room with a grand piano, a sunroom full of plants, surprisingly healthy given Catherine had been gone 2 weeks. Maggie must have been watering them. A study with a massive desk and more bookshelves. Everywhere Emma looked, she found evidence of a life lived deliberately. This wasn't the house of a hermit. It was the house of someone who'd chosen exactly how she wanted to exist in the world. By the time they returned to the foyer, it was nearly 10. Emma was exhausted, overwhelmed, more confused than ever. She stood at the base of the grand staircase, looking up into the darkness of the second floor. Her eyes followed the banister up to a landing where hallways branched in 2 directions. And above that, she could just make out another staircase, narrower, leading to the 3rd floor. The attic. The thought sent an inexplicable shiver down her spine. Let's find bedrooms. Emma's voice sounded strange in the quiet house. You need sleep. The second-floor hallway stretched in both directions, doors closed on either side. Emma counted 8 doors just from where she stood. She opened the nearest one, a bedroom, large with a canopy bed and windows overlooking the front grounds. The next room was similar but smaller. Perfect for Lily. This one's yours, baby. Lily dropped her backpack, bounced on the bed testing it, then ran to the window. Mom, we have a pond and gardens. Everything's covered in snow, but I can see them. Emma helped her unpack, tucked her in under quilts that smelled of cedar and thyme. Lily's eyes were already drooping. Best Christmas Eve ever, she murmured. Emma kissed her forehead, throat tight. Get some sleep, honey. Tomorrow we'll explore more. But as she turned to leave, Lily's voice stopped her. Mom, do you think Great Aunt Catherine was happy here? Emma looked back at her daughter, small in that big bed. I don't know, but I think maybe she found something that mattered more than happiness. Purpose, maybe, or peace. Is that enough? The question hung in the air, unanswerable. Sometimes it has to be. Maya retreated to the hallway, left Lily's door cracked open the way she liked. She should find her own room, unpack, sleep. But something pulled her back down the stairs, back to the study. Catherine's letter sat in her bag. Emma pulled it out, held it up to the desk lamp. The phoenix seal glinted. She broke it carefully, unfolded heavy paper, and began to read. My dear Emma, if you're reading this, then you've come to Frost Hollow. You've seen the house, and knowing you, knowing your nature, you're probably confused, frightened, and wondering why a woman you never met would burden you with this inheritance. I followed your life from a distance. I know that sounds unsettling, perhaps even inappropriate, but you're the only family I had left who might understand what I'm about to ask of you. You preserve history at that museum. You understand that some things are too important to lose, too valuable to let die with us. What you're about to discover will change everything. It may frighten you. It will certainly challenge you. But I have always believed, that you're strong enough to carry what I'm about to give you. Not the money or the property, though those are yours too, but the truth, the responsibility, the choice. I could have destroyed what's in the attic. God knows it would have been easier, but destruction isn't preservation. And preservation is what our family does, whether we acknowledge it or not. You'll face pressure. You'll face threats. People will offer you money, fame, security. They'll tell you what you should do, must do. Don't listen to them. Listen to that daughter of yours. Children see things clearly that we adults make complicated. I'm sorry to lay this at your feet. I'm sorry I couldn't explain it in person. But I ran out of time, and you're the only one left who might have the courage to do what I couldn't, what I should have done decades ago. The key you need is where Bronte hides. Third shelf, left side. You'll understand when you find it. Open the attic, Emma. Learn what I've protected all these years. Then decide what happens next. The world is watching, even if it doesn't know it yet. With all my love and all my faith in you, Catherine P.S. Tell Lily that her great-great-aunt was watching over her too. She sounds like a remarkable girl. She'll help you be brave when you need it most. Emma read the letter 3 times, her mind racing. The attic. Catherine had left something in the attic that required courage, that would change everything. And she'd known about Lily, had known Emma had a daughter, had been watching them both. Emma stood, walked to the bookshelves lining the study. Third shelf from the top, left side. She counted down, ran her finger along spines until she found it. Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, worn leather edition. She pulled it out carefully. The book felt wrong, too light. She opened it. The pages had been hollowed out, creating a small compartment. Inside lay a tiny brass key on a silver chain, the phoenix symbol etched into its head. Emma lifted it free, the metal cold against her palm. So small, so delicate. Hardly the key to something worth $280 million. Hardly the key to anything world-changing. But that's what Catherine had called it. A truth that would challenge her. A responsibility. Emma closed her fist around the key. Tomorrow. Tomorrow she would take Lily up to the attic and discover what Catherine had protected for so long. Tonight she needed sleep. She needed to believe for just a few more hours that inheriting a mansion was the strangest thing that would happen to them. She climbed the grand staircase, found a bedroom across the hall from Lily's, and collapsed onto the bed fully clothed. Through the window, she could see snow falling gently now, the storm passing, covering everything in white. Somewhere in the house, something creaked, old wood settling, or the wind finding cracks, or the building itself adjusting to new occupants after 45 years of solitude. Emma closed her eyes and, despite everything, slept. She woke to sunlight streaming through unfamiliar windows and the smell of coffee. For a disoriented moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory crashed back. The mansion. The inheritance. Catherine's letter. Emma stumbled downstairs in yesterday's clothes, following the coffee scent to the kitchen. Lily sat at the massive granite island, swinging her legs, eating cereal from a bowl almost too big for her hands. "You made coffee?" Lily grinned. "The machine was easy. Just press the button. I figured you'd need it." Emma poured a mug, held it like a lifeline. "What time is it?" "Almost 9. You were really tired." Through the kitchen windows, Emma could see the storm had passed. The world was pristine white, untouched, beautiful in the way that makes you forget how dangerous snow can be. The pond Lily had mentioned was visible now, frozen and smooth. Gardens lay buried under drifts. The property stretched farther than Emma had realized last night. Woods in every direction. "Mom." Lily's voice had changed, taken on the quality it got when she'd been thinking hard about something. "While you were asleep, I explored a little. I hope that's okay." Emma's stomach tightened. "What did you find?" "There's a loose floorboard in my room. Under it, there was this." Lily pulled something from beside her on the counter. An old journal, leather-bound, edges worn soft with age. Emma set down her coffee. "Lily, you shouldn't—" "I know, but I couldn't help it. Look at the first page." Emma opened the journal carefully. The handwriting was Catherine's. She recognized it from the letter. The date was August 1945. "If Emma comes, she'll understand. If she brings family, even better. They'll know what to do. What I couldn't." Lily leaned closer. "There's more. It talks about a collection, something in the attic, and it mentions a phoenix key. Mom, I think Great-Aunt Catherine left us a treasure hunt." Emma's hand moved to her pocket where she'd put the key after finding it last night. Lily's eyes tracked the movement. "You found it already, didn't you?" "The key from Jane Eyre." Lily's grin widened. "That's my favorite book. We read it in class." Emma stared at her daughter. "How did you—" "The letter mentioned Bronte, right? And Jane Eyre is the most famous Bronte novel. Plus, Catherine kept mentioning a phoenix, and there's a whole thing in the book about Jane being independent and not trapped. The phoenix is about rebirth." She shrugged, matter of fact. "It wasn't that hard." Emma laughed despite herself, despite the strangeness of the situation. "You're 9 years old and you just solved a puzzle that's been waiting here for who knows how long. So can we go up to the attic, please?" Lily's eyes shone with excitement that was only partly about adventure. Mostly, Emma suspected, it was about them doing something together, about having a mystery to solve instead of bills to worry about. Emma thought about Catherine's letter. The truth, the responsibility, the choice. She thought about the pressure and threats Catherine had mentioned. She thought about her daughter's face, bright with curiosity and hope. There were probably very good reasons to wait, to call Robert Mitchell, to have lawyers present when they opened whatever Catherine had hidden. But Emma had spent her entire adult life waiting, being careful, following rules that kept her poor and invisible. Catherine had chosen her for a reason, had chosen them. "Yes." Emma stood, held out her hand. "Let's see what your great-great-aunt wanted us to find." They climbed the grand staircase together, hand in hand, moved down the second-floor hallway to its far end, where a narrower staircase ascended into shadow. The steps were steeper here, built for servants or storage, not for grand entrances. At the top, a door. Brass lock, keyhole dark and waiting. Emma pulled out the Phoenix key, slipped it into the lock. Perfect fit. It turned with a soft click that echoed. The door swung inward. Cold air rushed out, carrying scents of old wood and paper and time itself. Beyond the doorway, stairs climbed into complete darkness. Emma pulled out her phone, turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through black, illuminating wooden steps thick with dust. the first dust they'd seen in the entire house. Whatever was up there, even Maggie hadn't been allowed to clean it. This was Catherine's private space, the place where she'd kept her secrets. Emma's heart hammered. Every rational part of her brain said to wait, to come back in daylight, to be more careful. But her archivist's instincts were screaming. A locked attic in a mansion inherited from a mysterious great-aunt who'd lived alone for 45 years. This was the story. This was the answer. Ready? She looked at Lily. Her daughter nodded, squeezed her hand tighter. Together, right? Together. They climbed. The stairs turned, opened into the attic proper. It was vast. The space stretched the entire length of the house, exposed beams arching overhead like the ribs of some great beast. Emma's phone light revealed shapes draped in cloth, furniture, and trunks and boxes, the accumulated inheritance of generations. But in the center of the room, illuminated by a shaft of sunlight breaking through a dormer window, sat something different. A chest, large, wooden, ornately carved with patterns Emma couldn't quite make out from this distance. It sat alone on the bare floor, as if everything else had been pushed back to give it space, as if it had been waiting, placed exactly here for them to find. Lily's whisper seemed loud in the silence. "Mom, look at the carving." Emma moved closer, knelt before the chest. The carving was intricate, flowers and vines, and there, in deep relief on the lid, the phoenix symbol. Wings spread, rising from flames. The chest had a lock but no keyhole. Emma examined it closely. The mechanism looked old but not rusted. Someone had taken care of this chest, kept it protected. She tried the keys from her ring one after another. None fit. Lily peered over her shoulder. Maybe there's another clue in the journal? Emma pulled it out, flipped through pages. Catherine's entries were sporadic, emotional, often cryptic, but near the end, dated just 3 months before Catherine died. "The collection is my burden and my shame. I thought I could protect them, decide their fate, but preservation became imprisonment. I was too afraid to let go. Emma is stronger. She'll know what to do. The real key isn't in a lock. It's in understanding that some things are too important to own." Lily frowned. "That's not very helpful." Unless, Emma stood, examined the chest from different angles. The lock mechanism had no keyhole because it didn't need a key. She pressed on the phoenix carving, felt it give slightly. A hidden release. The lock clicked open. "Mom!" Lily bounced on her toes. "You did it." The lid wasn't heavy. Emma lifted it slowly, revealing what lay inside, and her entire world shifted on its axis. The chest was lined with acid-free tissue paper, everything organized with meticulous care. Emma's archivist training took over. She photographed the chest's arrangement before touching anything, documented the state of preservation, noted how each layer was labeled in Catherine's precise handwriting. The first layer held bonds. United States war bonds from 1943 and 1944, each one worth $10,000 when purchased. Emma counted 37 before her hands started shaking too badly to continue. Lily's math skills kicked in. "Mom, that's $370,000. Just in this first layer." Emma's voice came out strangled. "With compound interest over 80 years, multiply that by..." She couldn't finish the calculation. Her brain refused. Beneath the bonds were letters. Not just any letters, correspondence that made Emma's breath stop. A letter from Eleanor Roosevelt dated August 1944, thanking Catherine for her invaluable service to the war effort and to the preservation of culture itself. Another from someone at the Office of Strategic Services, marked classified in a faded red stamp. A third from a French museum curator, written in 1946, describing Catherine as the woman who saved what we thought was lost forever. Lily read over Emma's shoulder, sounding out words. "Mom, was Great Aunt Catherine a spy?" Emma spread the letters across the dusty floor, creating a timeline. Slowly, a picture emerged. Catherine Hartwell hadn't been a hermit who abandoned her family. She'd been recruited during World War II, part of some effort to track down cultural treasures stolen by the Nazis. The monuments men maybe, or something similar, but more covert. The third layer contained photographs, black and white images of Catherine in her 20s, standing beside uniformed soldiers and men in suits. In one photo, she stood in front of a church with a wooden crate at her feet, a painting visible through the slats. In another, she shook hands with a general, both of them smiling despite a bombed-out building behind them. These weren't photos of someone who'd run from life. These were photos of someone who'd run toward purpose. But it was the fourth layer that stole Emma's breath completely. Wrapped in multiple layers of tissue paper, protected by cedar blocks, were certificates of authenticity. Not for artwork Catherine had saved during the war, though those documents were here too, but for pieces she'd purchased afterward. Between 1946 and 1953, Catherine had quietly acquired 17 paintings and sculptures. Small pieces mostly, things that could be transported and hidden. But each one had a story that made Emma's heart pound. A Monet sketch purchased from a Jewish family trying to rebuild after losing everything in the Holocaust. The certificate included a letter from the family blessing Catherine's ownership, thanking her for paying 3 times the asking price. "You gave us the money to start again," it read. "The painting is yours with our gratitude and love." A Degas bronze bought at a Paris auction in 1948. The provenance documents showed it had been looted from a museum in Amsterdam, recovered by Allied forces, sold to fund reconstruction efforts. Catherine had purchased it legally, then donated half the proceeds back to the museum. A Renaissance sketch attributed to Leonardo da Vinci, acquired from a Swiss collector in 1951. This one had documentation suggesting it might have been stolen from an Italian villa during the war, though the trail was murky. Catherine's notes indicated she'd spent 2 years researching its origins before purchasing. Even then, she'd included a letter stating that if the original Italian family ever came forward with legitimate claim, the piece should be returned immediately, no questions asked. 17 pieces. Emma found documentation for each one. Photographs, certificates of authenticity, provenance records, insurance valuations, and Catherine's personal notes on their history and significance. The most recent appraisal, conducted by Sotheby's in 2010, estimated the total collection value at $283 million. Emma stared at the number until the digits blurred. $283 million. She'd inherited a fortune. But more than that, she'd inherited a responsibility. Because the collection wasn't just valuable, it was complicated. Lily sat beside her, looking at photographs of paintings they couldn't see. "Mom, these belonged to families who died in the war. Jewish families. Families who lost everything." Emma's throat tightened. "Yes, baby. That's exactly right. So shouldn't we give them back?" Lily's voice was matter-of-fact, as if the answer was obvious. "If someone took my toys and then someone else found them, I'd want them back." Emma pulled her daughter close, overwhelmed by her clarity, her instinctive understanding of what mattered. "You're absolutely right. That's exactly what we should do. Even if it means we don't get rich, some things are more important than being rich, honey." Emma's voice cracked, like doing what's right, like making sure people's stories don't get forgotten. They sat in the attic surrounded by documents that told stories of theft and survival, and Catherine's own complicated legacy. Emma thought about her great-aunt spending 45 years alone in this house, unable to decide the fate of these pieces, paralyzed by the weight of responsibility. Catherine's final journal entry echoed in her mind. "I was too afraid to let go. Emma is stronger." Emma looked at her daughter, 9 years old, sitting in a dusty attic on Christmas morning, surrounded by millions of dollars in artwork she couldn't see, advocating for returning everything to families who'd lost it decades ago. Maybe Catherine had been right. Maybe Emma was stronger. Or maybe, more likely, having Lily beside her made her brave enough to do what Catherine couldn't. "Mom." Lily's small hand found hers. "What happens now?" Emma stood, helped Lily to her feet, looked around the attic one more time. "Now we protect this. We figure out who these pieces belong to. We make sure Catherine's work, all of it, the good and the complicated, matters. And then we finish what she started. We let go." They were halfway down the attic stairs when Emma's phone buzzed. No signal in the attic, but now 17 missed calls, all from numbers she didn't recognize. Her stomach dropped. How did anyone even have her number? She'd only told Robert Mitchell she was coming. She scrolled through voicemails. "Miss Carson, this is Marcus Beaumont from the Beaumont Gallery in New York. I understand you've inherited the Hartwell estate. I'd like to discuss acquisition opportunities." "Emma, this is Catherine Liu, private collector. I'm prepared to make a very generous offer for any artwork in the estate. Please call me immediately." "Miss Carson, James Hartford, Hartford Auction House. We've been monitoring the Hartwell collection for years. Now that the estate has changed hands, we'd like to be your first call. On and on they went. Galleries, collectors, museums, auction houses, people she'd never heard of offering money she couldn't comprehend for a collection they shouldn't have known existed. Catherine had kept this secret for nearly 80 years. Emma had been in the house less than 24 hours, and somehow the entire art world knew. Her hands started shaking. Lily looked up at her, worried. "Mom, what's wrong?" Emma opened her laptop, Catherine's laptop, she realized, left on the desk in the study. She typed, "Victoria Hartwell Collection." The search results made her feel sick. Articles from art blogs, collector forums, industry newsletters. Legendary Hartwell collection may finally come to market. Rumors swirl about World War II-era art hoard in Vermont. Death of reclusive collector sparks feeding frenzy. The articles were all dated within the last 2 weeks. Since Catherine's death, someone had been waiting, watching, ready to pounce the moment the estate changed hands. Emma clicked the most recent article, published yesterday. It included a photo of their house, clearly taken from the road with a telephoto lens. The article cited anonymous sources claiming Catherine had amassed one of the most significant private collections of looted World War II art in existence. But it was the final paragraph that made Emma's blood run cold. The new owner, identified as Emma Carson, 32, is a low-level museum archivist with no experience in high-value art transactions. Industry insiders suggest she may be unprepared for the legal and ethical complexities of managing such a collection. This is exactly the kind of situation where pieces can disappear into private hands or be sold to the highest bidder without proper consideration of their cultural significance, said Dr. Vincent Aldrich, professor of art history at Columbia University. We can only hope Miss Carson understands the responsibility she's inherited. Emma slammed the laptop shut, breathing hard. They were already dismissing her, already assuming she'd either sell out or screw up. And the worst part, they weren't entirely wrong. She was a low-level archivist. She had $17,000 in student loan debt and couldn't afford to fix her car's transmission without doing it herself. What did she know about managing a $283 million art collection? "Mom," Lily's voice was small, scared. "Are the bad people coming?" Emma knelt, pulled her daughter close. "I don't know, baby. Maybe. But we're going to be smart about this. We're going to be prepared." A knock at the front door made them both jump. Emma moved to the window, looked out. A black Mercedes SUV sat in the driveway, pristine despite the snow. A man in an expensive coat stood on the porch, stamping his feet. He knocked again, more insistently. Emma walked to the front door, but didn't open it, kept the chain on. "Who is it?" The voice that answered was cultured, carrying a faint accent that suggested European education or affectation. "Dr. Vincent Aldrich. I believe you just read about me. May I come in? It's rather cold out here." Emma's mind raced. This was the professor who'd called her unprepared. What was he doing here on Christmas morning? She cracked the door, left the chain engaged. "How did you get through the gate?" Aldrich smiled. He was in his 60s, silver-haired, the kind of face that probably charmed donors at museum fundraisers and intimidated graduate students. "The gate was open when I arrived. I hope I'm not intruding." The gate had definitely been closed when they arrived last night. Emma had watched Robert lock it. Someone had opened it. Someone had been watching the house. "What do you want?" "To help you." He pulled out a business card, slipped it through the gap. "I'm a professor of art history at Columbia, but I also consult for museums and private collectors on issues of provenance and restitution. Your great-aunt's collection is legendary in certain circles. I've spent 20 years researching pieces that disappeared during the war. Catherine left documentation for everything." Emma's voice came out more defensive than she'd intended. "I'm sure she did. Victoria was nothing if not meticulous. But documentation doesn't solve every problem. Some of these pieces, regardless of how they were acquired, morally belong to other people. Museums, countries, families. Are you prepared to navigate those conversations?" He paused for effect. "Are you prepared for the lawsuits, the media attention, the pressure from people with far more resources and expertise than you?" Emma's jaw tightened. "I haven't even decided what I'm doing yet." "Then let me help you decide. Aldrich's voice took on a warmer tone, almost paternal. Look, I know this is overwhelming. You were an archivist yesterday. Today you're sitting on one of the most significant private collections in the world. You didn't ask for this, but you have an opportunity to do something remarkable. Work with me. Let me help you establish proper provenance for each piece, identify rightful claimants, facilitate returns where appropriate. And for the pieces with clear, uncontested ownership, we can arrange sales or donations that benefit everyone. He let that sink in. You'd never have to worry about money again. And the art world would see you as a hero, not a profiteer. What do you get out of this? Emma asked. Aldrich shrugged. A consulting fee, a chance to see these pieces properly placed. Academic recognition for helping resolve one of the great mysteries of wartime art theft. I'm not going to pretend I'm purely altruistic, but my interests align with what's right. Can you say the same about everyone else who's going to come knocking? Before Emma could respond, another car pulled into the driveway. Then another. Within minutes, 3 more vehicles had arrived. People stepped out, all dressed expensively, all carrying briefcases or portfolios. They gathered near the porch, a small crowd forming. Emma's heart hammered. This was insane. It was Christmas morning, and strangers were swarming her property like vultures. You see, Aldrich said quietly, word travels fast in our world. These people smell money. Some of them are legitimate museum representatives, ethical dealers. Others are just predators. You need someone who can tell the difference, someone who can protect you. Emma looked past him at the growing crowd. She recognized one face from the Art News article, Catherine Liu, the private collector. Another man was photographing the house. A woman in a fur coat was speaking urgently into her phone. This wasn't help. This was an invasion. Leave. Emma's voice came out stronger than she felt. All of you, this is private property. Aldrich's expression hardened. Be reasonable, Miss Carson. Leave or I call the police. The police can't help you navigate international art law. Maybe not. Emma pulled out her phone. But they can arrest you for trespassing. You have 60 seconds. Aldrich stared at her for a long moment, his charming facade cracking to reveal something colder underneath. You're making a mistake. You can't handle this alone. Within a week, you'll be drowning in lawsuits and ethics complaints. Within a month, the IRS will be auditing every dollar of that estate. You need expertise. What I need is for you to get off my property. He left, but not before dropping another business card on the porch. When you change your mind, and you will, call that number. The others followed slowly, reluctantly, engines starting, cars crunching, back down the snowy driveway. Emma watched until the last one disappeared through the gate. Then she ran outside in her boots and yesterday's clothes, found the gate controls, and closed it herself. The lock clicked into place with a satisfying thunk. Back inside, she found Lily sitting on the bottom step of the grand staircase, hugging her knees. Mom, I'm scared. Emma sat beside her, pulled her close. Me too, honey. Me too, but we're gonna be okay, right? You always figure things out. Emma thought about the crowd that had just descended on them, about the articles dismissing her competence, about Catherine spending 45 years alone, paralyzed by the weight of impossible choices, about the 17 families whose stolen heritage sat in boxes in the attic, waiting for someone brave enough to return it. You know what? Emma stood, held out her hand to Lily. We are going to be okay, because we're going to do something Catherine couldn't. What's that? We're going to ask for help. The right kind of help. From people who actually care about doing what's right instead of what's profitable. She called Robert Mitchell. His voice was warm with concern when he answered. Emma, are you all right? I heard there was some commotion. Word travels fast in small towns. How did you... Never mind. Robert, I need your advice. I need to know who I can trust, and I need security. People were on my property this morning. They got through my locked gate. Robert was quiet for a moment. I know someone. Harold Webb, Vietnam veteran, best contractor in 3 counties. He does security installations. More importantly, he's the kind of man who protects what matters. I'll ask him to come by this afternoon if you'd like. Yes, please. And Robert? Emma glanced at Lily, who was watching her with those serious green eyes. I'm going to need a lawyer, not for selling the collection, for protecting it while I figure out how to return pieces to their rightful owners. She could hear the smile in Robert's voice. Catherine chose well. I'll be by it too with some names. And Emma, don't let them intimidate you. You have something they don't. What's that? You actually give a damn about the right thing. After he hung up, Emma sat with Lily in the study, Catherine's journal open between them. They read through entries together, piecing together the story of a woman who'd served her country, saved priceless art, and then spent 45 years trapped by her own inability to let go. One entry from 1967. How do you own beauty that was born from suffering? How do you hold on to what rightfully belongs to people who can never reclaim it? I don't know if keeping these pieces hidden is preservation or theft. I'm running out of time to decide. Lily looked up. Mom, she sounds so sad. Emma nodded. She was. She carried all this alone. She thought she had to have all the answers before she could act. But maybe, Emma closed the journal, maybe the answer is that we don't have to have all the answers. We just have to be willing to try, to do the hard thing even when we're scared. Is that what we're doing? Emma looked at her daughter, 9 years old and braver than any adult Emma knew. Yeah, baby, I think that's exactly what we're doing. The afternoon brought Harold Webb. He was 68, built like someone who'd spent a lifetime working with his hands, with eyes that saw things other people missed. He walked the property with Emma, Lily trailing behind, and within an hour he'd identified 3 places where the fence could be breached, 2 windows with inadequate locks, and the fact that the gate's electronic lock was vulnerable to bypass. You've got good instincts, he said, watching Emma test a window latch herself. Most people would have panicked this morning. You took control. I don't feel in control. Control isn't about feeling. It's about doing what needs done despite the fear. Harold pulled out a notebook, sketched a rough security plan. I can install cameras, motion sensors, reinforce the locks. The gate needs a complete upgrade, he looked at her seriously. But this is going to cost. And these people who came today, they'll be back. With money, lawyers, pressure. You prepared for that? Emma thought about the 17 pieces in the attic. About families who deserve to have their heritage returned. About Catherine's 45 years of solitude and regret. About Lily, who deserved to grow up understanding that some things mattered more than wealth. No. She met Harold's gaze. I'm not prepared, but I'm going to do it anyway. Harold smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. Then we'll make sure you're as prepared as possible. I'll start tomorrow. And Miss Carson, you're not alone in this. Small towns look after their own. Catherine was good to Frost Hollow, even if most people didn't see it. We won't let vultures pick apart what she built. That evening, as twilight fell over the Vermont hills, Emma and Lily sat in the study surrounded by Catherine's documentation. They'd organized the files by piece, creating a system for tracking provenance, identifying potential claimants, documenting the ethical questions each artwork raised. Lily fell asleep on the couch, exhausted by the day's chaos and excitement. Emma covered her with a quilt, then returned to the desk. She pulled out Catherine's final letter, read it one more time. The words that had seemed cryptic last night now made terrible, beautiful sense. Some things are too important to own. Emma understood now. The fortune Catherine had left wasn't the artwork or the money. It was the opportunity to finish what Catherine had started. To prove that preservation didn't mean possession. That responsibility could be shared. That letting go could be the strongest act of protection. She opened her laptop, began drafting an email to the Goldstein family, the one whose Monet sketch Catherine had purchased in 1948. The family who'd blessed the sale but might not know the piece still existed. Her fingers hesitated over the keyboard. Once she sent this, there would be no going back. Once she started returning pieces, she'd be committing to a path that meant giving away millions, facing legal battles, standing against people with far more power and resources. She thought about Lily's question. Is that enough? Purpose instead of happiness? She thought about Catherine, alone for 45 years, unable to choose. She thought about the families who'd lost everything and deserved to have even small pieces of their history returned. Emma began to type. Outside, fresh snow began to fall, covering tracks and tracks of footprints from the morning's invasion, making everything white and pristine again. The mansion settled around them with creaks and surmise. a living thing adjusting to new occupants who would finally finish what its previous guardian could not. Tomorrow would bring more pressure, more threats, more people trying to convince Emma she was making mistakes. But tonight, in this study, with her daughter sleeping nearby and Catherine's legacy spread across the desk, Emma Carson felt something she hadn't felt in years. Purpose, direction. The knowledge that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what mattered, regardless of the cost. The inheritance wasn't the mansion or the money or even the artwork. It was the chance to prove that some burdens become lighter when you're brave enough to share them. That some treasures only have meaning when you give them away. That family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when the world tries to tell you you're not enough. Emma hit send on the email, then started drafting the next one. There were 16 more families to find, 16 more chances to make things right. She had work to do. Harold Webb arrived at dawn with a truck full of security equipment and a 10-year-old boy with curious eyes and his grandfather's solid build. Tommy climbed out of the passenger side, spotted Lily watching from the kitchen window, and waved. Within an hour, the two kids were inseparable, exploring the property's frozen gardens while Harold taught Emma the fundamentals of perimeter defense. He moved through the mansion with military precision, marking weak points, testing sight lines, explaining fields of fire like he was preparing for siege rather than installation. "You've got good bones here." Harold tapped a window frame, solid oak beneath peeling paint. "But bones don't stop determined people." He pulled out a drill, began mounting the first camera. "These folks who came yesterday, they'll probe for weakness, test your resolve. You need to see them coming before they get close." Emma held the camera housing steady while he secured it, her hands remembering the mechanics of installation from museum security work. "How do you know so much about this?" 30 years Army Corps of Engineers. 10 of those in places where perimeter meant life or death. Harold's voice stayed matter-of-fact, no drama in the telling. "You learn to think like the enemy. What would I do if I wanted inside? That's where you put your defenses." Outside, Lily and Tommy discovered the garden maze, its hedges buried under snow, but paths still visible. Their laughter filtered through the windows, bright against winter silence. Harold smiled, first warmth Emma had seen in his weathered face. "Tommy lost his parents 2 years back. Car accident on Route 7. Lives with me now." He paused, measuring wire. "Your girl's good for him. First real smile I've seen in months." Emma watched the children through the window, Lily showing Tommy something in her phone. Both of them bent over the screen like conspirators. "I'm glad. She needs friends. We've moved 3 times in 4 years chasing work. Never stayed anywhere long enough for her to build connections." "You're staying now?" The question hung between them. Emma thought about the emails she'd sent last night, about the responses already flooding her inbox, some grateful, some threatening, all demanding decisions she wasn't qualified to make. "I don't know. This feels bigger than me." Harold finished mounting the camera, tested the angle. "Everything worth doing feels bigger than us at first. You grow into it or you don't." He met her eyes. "Catherine grew into it. Took her 45 years, but she got there. You've got that girl to remind you what matters. That's an advantage your aunt didn't have." The week that followed established patterns that felt almost normal. Harold came each morning with Tommy, installed cameras and motion sensors, upgraded locks to military specifications. Lily started an online correspondence course. Her Boston school had emailed permission given the circumstances, and did lessons at the kitchen table while Emma organized Catherine's files into databases. The kids explored during breaks, returning with discoveries: a workshop in the carriage house, a root cellar with shelves of preserved goods, places Catherine had maintained but never mentioned in her journals. On the 4th day, a contractor Emma didn't recognize appeared at the door. Slight man, maybe 40, carrying a toolbox and wearing coveralls with Mitchell and Associates embroidered on the chest. "Robert sent me to inspect the furnace." The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Annual maintenance should have been done last month, but Catherine's passing delayed things." Emma's instinct fired before she could articulate why. "Robert would have called first. I'll verify that." She pulled out her phone. "Wait here." The man's expression shifted, frustration bleeding through false courtesy. "Look, lady, I've got 4 other jobs today. Either let me do my work or—" "Mom!" Lily's voice cut through from the stairs, sharp with recognition. That's one of the men from Christmas morning. He was with the crowd. The contractor's face hardened. He pushed past Emma toward the basement door. Harold materialized from the study, moving with deceptive speed for a man nearly 70. His hand caught the contractor's shoulder, spun him around. "I think you're lost, friend." Harold's voice carried decades of command authority. "This property's private. Owner says leave, you leave." The contractor jerked free but stepped back, calculating odds he clearly didn't like. "You people don't understand what you're dealing with." Emma grabbed her phone, started recording. "You're trespassing. You lied about who sent you. I've got your face on video and Harold here is a witness. You want to dig that hole deeper or you want to walk away?" He left, muttering threats that didn't quite cross into actionable territory. Emma watched through the window as he photographed the house from his truck before driving off. Her hands shook with adrenaline crash. Harold pulled out his own phone, already dialing. "Got his plates. Sheriff's a friend. We'll have an ID within the hour." The name came back before lunch. Marcus Brennan, employed by Aldrich Art Verification Services, based in Manhattan. 3 priors for breaking and entering, all charges dropped when high-priced lawyers intervened. Harold's sheriff friend added an unofficial note. "This guy's part of a crew that specializes in acquiring artwork through legally questionable means. If he's sniffing around your property, somebody hired him to get inside." Emma sat at Catherine's desk, staring at Brennan's mugshot on her laptop screen. The pieces were connecting. Aldrich hadn't come to help. He'd come to assess, to plant an inside man, to get access to the collection before Emma could properly secure it. She opened her files on the collection, cross-referenced against the photographs she'd taken of every document in the attic chest. 17 pieces accounted for, all documentation present. But something nagged at her, a detail out of place. The Vermeer bronze. The provenance paperwork felt different, newer paper stock than the others, ink that hadn't faded the same way. Catherine had been meticulous about preservation. Why would one document show different aging? Emma called the Boston Museum colleague who'd helped her verify credentials. "I need you to look at something. Can I drive down tomorrow?" The next morning, Emma and Lily made the 6-hour round trip through melting snow. Her colleague took one look at the Vermeer documentation, ran it under UV light, and shook his head. "This is a forgery, Emma. Good one, but the paper's wrong. This was made within the last year, not 1948. He looked up, concern etched in his features. "Someone switched your documentation." "If they switched the paper trail, they might have switched the piece too." Emma's blood ran cold. When could they have done it? He checked his notes. "You said the house had weekly cleaning service?" Her colleague's expression turned grim. "All they'd need is 20 minutes alone with the right pieces. Switch the artwork, switch the papers, and suddenly you're holding a forgery while they've got the original." Lily grabbed Emma's hand, fear bright in her eyes. "Mom, does this mean we were robbed?" Emma drove back to Frost Hollow with her heart hammering and her mind racing through possibilities. She'd installed Harold's cameras only 5 days ago. Before that, anyone could have entered while Maggie was cleaning. Catherine might not have checked the collection regularly. The attic chest had been sealed, dust covered. How long ago had the switch happened? Harold met them at the door, took one look at Emma's face and understood. What happened? Someone planted a forgery. Emma pushed past him toward the study. "We need to inventory everything, now, every single piece against Catherine's photographs. If they switched one, they might have switched others." They worked through the night, Emma, Harold, and even Lily helping cross-reference. By 3 a.m., they'd verified every piece matched Catherine's documentation except the Vermeer. Whoever had made the switch had targeted one specific artwork, planted the fake to discredit Emma's authentication abilities, make her look incompetent or complicit. Harold studied the situation with tactical assessment. This is sophisticated. They're not trying to steal everything at once. They're undermining your credibility, so when pieces start disappearing, you're the obvious suspect. Emma's exhaustion made the room tilt. Who would Aldrich? Harold pulled up news articles on his laptop. Look at this. 3 cases in the last decade where he consulted for estates, pieces went missing, families blamed the heirs, and years later the artworks appeared in private collections. Never enough proof for charges, but the pattern's clear. The next morning brought new pressure. Frost Hollow's town council announced an emergency meeting to discuss the Hartwell estate. Emma had attended with Harold, leaving Lily with Maggie Chen, who'd arrived with groceries and warm sympathy. The council chambers were cramped, overheated, packed with more people than Emma expected for a Monday afternoon in a town of 800. Vice President Martin Reeves called the meeting to order, his expression carrying the particular smugness of small-town politics about to exercise power. "We're here to address concerns about the Hartwell property." Reeves shuffled papers with theatrical importance. Multiple code violations have been reported. Health hazards, structural issues, the presence of a minor child in potentially unsafe conditions. Emma stood, fury burning through her exhaustion. "Those are lies. Harold Webb inspected every inch of that house. It's solid, up to code, and safer than half the buildings in this town." Reeves smiled, cold and calculated. "Mr. Webb is hardly an impartial inspector, given his financial interest in your security contract. The council has voted to hire an independent inspector. Until that inspection is complete, we're recommending the property be placed under town supervision." "You can't do that," Emma's voice cracked. "I have legal ownership, which means legal responsibility." Reeves leaned forward. "If that child is injured due to negligence, if those alleged artworks are stolen or damaged, who bears liability? The council must protect the interests of Frost Hollow's citizens." Sarah Bennett stood from the back, voice sharp with contempt. "Martin, your sudden concern for children's welfare is touching. Remind us, didn't you vote against school roof repairs last year? Claim we couldn't afford basic safety?" Reeves flushed. "That's hardly relevant." "It's completely relevant." Derek Shaw joined Sarah, bookstore owner turned unlikely ally. "You're not worried about Emma's daughter. You're worried about whatever deal you've cut with outside interests who want that collection. Prove it." Reeves's smile turned vicious. "Show evidence of malfeasance or sit down and let the council do its job." Emma's mind raced. She had suspicions, intuition, Harold's war stories about Aldrich's pattern. But proof? Nothing that would stand up here, in this room full of people who'd known Reeves for years and had no reason to trust an outsider who'd inherited wealth they'd never see. Then Lily pushed through the crowd, Maggie following helplessly behind. The girl carried Emma's laptop, face set with determination that made Emma's heart stop. "I have proof," Lily's voice carried, clear and certain. "Mom didn't want to show everyone because she's trying to be nice. But I'm tired of people being mean to her." She opened the laptop, turned it to face the council. The screen showed emails, Emma's correspondence with the Goldstein family about returning their Monet, discussions with Amsterdam's Rijksmuseum about the Degas, careful documentation of every step she was taking to restitute stolen artwork. But Lily had opened a different folder, one Emma hadn't seen. Catherine kept records too. Lily clicked through files. In 2015, Mr. Reeves tried to buy the Hartwell estate. Catherine said no. He got angry, sent letters saying she was selfish, that the property should belong to the town, that she'd pay for refusing him. She scrolled down. Last year, he borrowed $200,000 from a New York investment group. They're still expecting repayment. The room erupted. Reeves half stood, face purple. "Where did you get—" "Catherine's personal computer." Lily met his eyes without flinching. "She kept backups of everything, including the threatening letters you sent, the police reports she filed, the court order that made you stay away from her property." Emma's professional instincts took over. She moved forward, took the laptop from Lily, projected Catherine's files onto the council room's ancient screen. Bank records showing Reeves' debt, letters threatening Catherine if she didn't sell, correspondence with the same investment group that, Emma's research had revealed, was quietly backed by Aldrich's consulting firm. The pieces connected in real time, visible to everyone. Aldrich needed the collection. Reeves needed money. Catherine had stood between them, and now Emma stood where Catherine had. Reeves tried damage control, but the story was written in documents he couldn't deny. The council voted him out within 20 minutes, the mayor promising full investigation. As the room emptied, Emma pulled Lily aside. "How did you find those files?" "Catherine left them for us." Lily showed her the folder structure, nested deep in the computer's archives. She had a folder called "For Emma and Lily When They Need It." "I found it this morning while you were driving to Boston. Tommy helped me search." Emma pulled her daughter close, overwhelmed by gratitude and fear. "Baby, That was incredibly brave and incredibly dangerous. If Reeves had, but he didn't. Lily's voice carried certainty beyond her years. You taught me that sometimes you have to stand up even when you're scared. That's what I did. Outside, Harold waited by his truck. You've got a warrior there. He nodded toward Lily. She saved you today. Reeves would have tied you up in legal proceedings for months, given Aldrich time to work. The victory felt hollow. Emma had exposed local corruption, but Aldrich himself remained untouched, somewhere in Manhattan, planning his next move. That move came 2 weeks later. Emma received a call from Rachel Goldstein in New York. The family wanted to meet, to see the Monet sketch Emma had promised to return. They chose a coffee shop in Manhattan's Upper West Side, neutral territory, public enough to feel safe. Emma and Lily traveled down by train, the portfolio case containing the Monet held carefully in Emma's lap. The sketch was small, intimate, water lilies rendered in Monet's distinctive late style, worth perhaps $2 million at auction, but its value to the Goldstein family measured in losses that couldn't be quantified. Rachel arrived with her brother David, both in their 60s, carrying the weight of inherited trauma in their careful movements. They sat across from Emma and Lily, and for a long moment nobody spoke. My grandmother hung this in her bedroom. Rachel's voice shook. My mother only told me once. She said Ruth would sit and look at it every morning while she brushed her hair. It was the last thing she saw before her voice broke. Emma slid the portfolio across the table. It's yours. It always was. Catherine just kept it safe until I could get it back to you. David reached out with trembling hands, opened the case, and the decades collapsed. He touched the frame like it might dissolve, then covered his face and wept. Rachel held her brother, tears streaming, while Lily sat very still beside Emma, understanding that some moments needed silence. Later, after the Goldsteins had left with their reclaimed heritage, after they'd promised to send photographs and letters from Ruth's life in Vienna, after they'd hugged Lily and thanked Emma until the words felt insufficient, Emma and Lily stood on the Manhattan sidewalk in gathering twilight. That's why we're doing this, isn't it, Mom? Lily's hand found Emma's. Not for money. For that. Emma nodded, throat too tight for words. They caught the train back to Vermont, and somehow the miles passed quickly, both of them quiet with the weight of witnessing something sacred. History returned, grief acknowledged, healing begun. But healing wasn't Aldrich's business. When they returned to the mansion, they found the back door forced, security system disabled during a narrow window when Harold had been in town buying supplies. Nothing appeared missing, but Emma's office had been searched, files disturbed, and a new voicemail waited on her phone. Aldrich's voice, smooth and menacing. Miss Carson, you're making this far more difficult than necessary. Return my calls or face consequences you're not prepared for. Harold arrived within minutes of Emma's frantic call, surveyed the damage with grim efficiency. They got in and out fast. Professional work. Knew exactly where to look. What were they looking for? Harold pointed to the security monitor setup. They disabled cameras first. That takes knowledge of the system. He paused. Emma, they're escalating. Break-ins mean they're desperate. Desperate people make mistakes, but they also get dangerous. That night, Emma barely slept. She kept checking on Lily, kept reviewing security footage, kept running through scenarios. At 2 a.m., motion sensors triggered. Two figures climbed the fence at the property's northeast corner, approached through trees toward the house. Emma called Harold and the sheriff, grabbed Catherine's hunting rifle from the study, positioned herself where she could watch both doors. Her hands shook, but her aim stayed steady. Through the window, she watched the figures test the back door, try windows, probe for weaknesses. Sheriff's cruiser lights appeared 5 minutes later. 5 minutes that felt like hours. The intruders fled into the woods before anyone could reach them, but their presence delivered a message Emma understood perfectly. Aldrich wasn't backing down. He would keep pushing until he got what he wanted or someone got hurt. By March, Emma had returned 6 pieces to their rightful owners or donated them to museums with proper provenance documentation. Each return generated press coverage, most of it favorable, highlighting her commitment to restitution over profit. But each return also intensified pressure from those who wanted the collection for themselves. Aldrich's calls grew more frequent, more threatening. Anonymous letters arrived warning Emma of legal consequences, tax investigations, mysterious accidents. Harold moved it into the carriage house permanently, turning it into both residence and security station. Derek organized a volunteer night watch from Frost Hollow residents, veterans and locals who remembered Catherine's quiet generosity, who decided that protecting Emma meant protecting their town's integrity. On a Friday evening, 3 weeks before the blizzard that would change everything, Emma was organizing files in Catherine's study when Lily called from the basement workshop. Mom, you need to see this." Emma ran down the stairs, found Lily standing before a section of wall that didn't match the others. The child pointed to Catherine's maintenance log, open to a page from 1979. $3,000 for concrete work, foundation reinforcement. But there's nothing reinforced down here. Where did the concrete go? Emma examined the wall more closely. False panel, cleverly disguised but not quite perfect. She found a crowbar among Catherine's tools, pried carefully at the edges. The panel came free, revealing a reinforced door with a combination lock. Hours of searching Catherine's papers yielded the combination, hidden in a birthday. Catherine's mother's birthday, Emma realized, a gesture of reconciliation from a woman who'd lived with estrangement. The door opened onto a climate-controlled vault, 8 feet by 10, containing a smaller chest in a leather journal bound in cord. The chest held the 18th piece, a Cezanne watercolor, unsigned but unmistakable, worth perhaps $20 million if authenticated. It had never appeared in Catherine's official inventory, never been documented, never existed in any records Emma had found. The journal explained why. Catherine's final entries, written in the months before her death, detailed everything. Aldrich's approach in 1995, his threats when she refused to sell, his decades-long scheme of targeting elderly collectors, planting forgeries, stealing originals, leveraging legal pressure. Catherine had gathered evidence methodically. Bank records, photographs of stolen pieces appearing in private collections, testimony from families who'd been victimized, but she'd been too frightened to act. "Emma will be stronger than me," the final entry read. "She has something I didn't. She has someone to fight for. The Cezanne is my insurance policy. If Aldrich comes for her collection, this piece proves his pattern. The signature matches pieces he acquired from 3 other estates. It's his downfall if anyone has courage to use it." Emma photographed every page, made multiple backup copies, sent the originals to Robert Mitchell with instructions to deliver them to the FBI if anything happened to her. Then she called a number she'd been given weeks ago, Special Agent Maria Torres, White Collar Crimes Division, who'd been building a case against Aldrich for 5 years without enough evidence to prosecute. "I have what you need." Emma's voice was steady despite her hammering heart. "Catherine Hartwell documented everything. I'm ready to testify, but I need protection for me and my daughter, because once I turn this over, he's going to know exactly who burned him." Agent Torres arrived the next morning with 2 other agents, spent 6 hours reviewing Catherine's evidence, and left with enough material to request warrants. Within a week, they'd raided Aldrich's offices in Manhattan, his storage facilities in New Jersey, his consultant practice in Connecticut. They found $47 million in stolen artwork, forged provenance documents, a network of accomplices that stretched across 3 states. Aldrich was arrested while teaching a seminar at Columbia. Perp walked past colleagues and students, charged with fraud, conspiracy, theft, and attempted robbery. The news coverage was extensive, detailed, devastating to his reputation and career. Emma watched the broadcast with Lily and Harold, feeling no triumph. How many families had he hurt? How many collections had he dismantled? How much history had he stolen? Harold's hand found her shoulder. "You stopped him. That's what matters. All those families he would have hurt in the future, they're safe because you stood firm." This weather forecast that evening called for the season's largest snowstorm, 3 days out. Emma stood at the study window watching clouds gather over the mountains, knowing with absolute certainty that Aldrich wouldn't accept defeat quietly. He'd built a criminal empire over 40 years. Losing it meant losing everything. Reputation, freedom, identity. Men like that fought until they had nothing left to lose. The blizzard would bring more than snow. It would bring an ending, one way or another. Emma could feel it approaching like a presence, inevitable as winter itself. She checked the security monitors, verified Harold's position in the carriage house, made sure Lily was asleep. Then she sat at Catherine's desk and wrote a letter to her daughter to be opened if the worst happened. Instructions, bank accounts, contacts, everything Lily would need. But also this. You taught me what courage looks like. Standing up even when you're scared, choosing right over easy, believing that some things matter more than safety. Whatever happens, remember that you made me brave. You showed me how to let go of everything except what truly matters. I love you more than words can hold. Mom. She sealed the letter, placed it with Robert Mitchell's copies of Catherine's evidence, and prepared for the storm. The blizzard arrived 3 days later with a fury that seemed personal. Snow began falling at noon, light flurries that thickened into white curtains by evening. By nightfall, visibility had dropped to nothing, and the wind howled with voices that made Lily press closer to Emma at the kitchen table. Harold called from the carriage house at 10. His voice crackled through interference. Got 4 vehicles on the access road, 2 miles out. Moving slow but moving. They're coming tonight like I figured. Emma's stomach dropped. How many people? Can't tell in this weather. But they cut the power to the gate, had that on separate circuit. These aren't amateurs. He paused. Derek's on his way with 3 others from town. ETA 20 minutes if the roads hold. Sheriff's trying, but the highway's closing fast. Emma looked at Lily, who'd stopped pretending to read and was watching with fearful attention. Baby, remember what we practiced? Lily nodded, face pale but determined. Safe room in the wine cellar. Lock from inside. Don't come out until you or Harold says the password. That's my girl. Emma pulled her close, breathed in the scent of her daughter's hair, memorized this moment in case it was the last peaceful one they'd have. I need you to go there now. Take your tablet, the emergency supplies. Tommy's probably already there with his grandfather's walkie-talkie. I don't want to hide while you fight. I know. But you being safe means I can focus on keeping us all safe. That's how you help me, by being exactly where I know you're protected. Emma cupped Lily's face. You've been so brave, honey. Braver than I ever was at your age. But tonight I need you to be smart too. Lily hugged her fiercely, then grabbed her backpack and ran for the basement stairs. Emma watched until she heard the wine cellar door close, the lock engage. Harold had reinforced that door with steel plating. Short of explosives, nothing was getting through it. Emma grabbed Catherine's rifle from the study, checked the ammunition, positioned herself at the security monitors Harold had installed in the reinforced mudroom. 4 screens showed different angles of the property. The cameras had night vision, turning the snowstorm into grainy green chaos. Movement on camera 3, figures approaching from the northeast, same direction as the last attempt. 2 people, maybe 3, using the tree line for cover. Camera 1 caught a truck parking on the access road, headlights extinguished. More figures emerged, at least 4. Harold's voice crackled through her radio. I've got visual on 6 hostiles. They're spreading out, 3-point approach. Professional formation. He went quiet for a beat. Emma, these aren't art thieves. These are contractors, military or police washouts who hire out for illegal work. Aldrich sent his worst. The words settled into Emma's bones, cold as the storm. Can we hold them? Until Derek gets here with backup. Harold's certainty felt like a lifeline. They don't know we've got hardened positions. They think you're just a scared single mom. We're going to teach them different. The first man reached the back porch at 11:47 p.m. Emma watched him test the door, work on the lock for 30 seconds before Harold's floodlights exploded to life. The man stumbled back, blinded, and Derek's voice boomed through external speakers Harold had installed. You're on camera and the sheriff's been notified. Leave now and we don't press charges. The man pulled back into shadows. Moments later, Emma's phone buzzed with a number she didn't recognize. She let it go to voicemail, watched the screen light up again immediately. Harold's voice came through the radio. Don't answer. They want to negotiate, stall, divide our attention. But Emma's instinct said otherwise. She answered, put it on speaker. Miss Carson. The voice was cultured, familiar. Dr. Vincent Aldrich, somehow making calls from jail or through representatives. I can end this right now. No one needs to get hurt. Just let my associates retrieve what belongs to me, and everyone goes home safe. Emma's hand tightened on the rifle. Nothing here belongs to you. You're under arrest. Your empire's gone. A temporary setback. I have lawyers, resources, friends, and positions you can't imagine. The charges won't stick, but your interference has cost me time and reputation. I want compensation. The Leonardo sketch and the Cezanne, that's all. Give me those two pieces and this ends. Emma thought about the Leonardo, $60 million, proof of the Rossili family's existence before the war erased them. She thought about the Cezanne, Catherine's insurance policy, evidence of Aldrich's crimes. He wasn't asking for random pieces. He was asking for the ones that could hurt him most. The answer is no. Then what happens tonight is on your conscience. The line went dead. Emma's radio crackled. Harold's voice tight with urgency. They're breaching. Southeast window, back door, front porch simultaneously. Get down! The crash of breaking glass came from 3 directions at once. Emma dropped behind the reinforced counter Harold had positioned for exactly this purpose. Watch the monitors as figures poured through openings. The security system shrieked, alarms that would have brought police if the roads were passable. Derek's shotgun roared from the 2nd floor, firing warning shots through the stairwell. One of the intruders dove back through the window he'd entered, but others kept coming, professional and organized, moving through the house like they had blueprints. Emma triggered the sprinkler system, Harold's modification that drew from outdoor pipes already freezing in the blizzard. Water exploded through first-floor rooms, immediately turning to ice on the frigid floors. 2 men went down, sliding into walls with satisfying crashes. Harold's voice through the radio, "I'm coming through the connecting passage. Hold position." The connecting passage was Catherine's secret, a tunnel between the carriage house and main basement, built during Prohibition for purposes Emma could only guess at. Harold had found it during security sweeps, reinforced and prepared it for exactly this scenario. A man appeared in the mudroom doorway, reaching for Emma. She brought the rifle up, aimed at his center mass the way her father had taught her decades ago. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "On the ground, now, or I will shoot you." He saw her eyes, recognized real danger, and dropped. Emma had him zip-tied with the plastic restraints Harold had provided before he could reconsider. "One down," Derek's voice carried from upstairs. "2 more retreating through the window I shot at." "Harold, you got eyes on—" Harold's response cut through. 3 more in the study, going in." Emma moved through the ice-slicked hallway, using walls for support, toward the study where she'd spent months organizing Catherine's legacy. Through the doorway, she saw Harold standing between 3 men and Catherine's desk, the old veteran's body positioned like he'd die before letting them pass. One of the men pulled a crowbar. Harold didn't flinch. "Last chance to walk away, boys. I've survived worse than you in places you can't pronounce. Try me and learn something about pain." The man with the crowbar lunged. Harold moved with speed that defied his years, disarmed him with brutal efficiency, put him on the ground with a joint lock that made the man scream. The other 2 reconsidered their life choices and bolted for the broken window. Emma reached Harold's side as Derek thundered down the stairs. The bookstore owner carried his shotgun like he knew what to do with it, scanning for remaining threats. 5 minutes of coordinated chaos, checking rooms, securing the captured man, confirming the others had fled before they could breathe. Lily's voice crackled through Emma's radio, small and scared. "Mom, is it over?" "Not yet, baby. Stay put until I come get you. We're okay. I promise we're okay." But they weren't, not quite. Because through the study window, Emma saw lights approaching, 2 vehicles, sheriff's markings, and behind them 3 more vehicles without lights, blocking the driveway. Harold saw them too. "That's not good. They're boxing us in." The sheriff burst through the front door 10 minutes later, 2 deputies with him, all of them covered in snow and looking grim. "What in hell happened here?" Emma showed him the security footage, played the recording of Aldrich's call, pointed to the captured man now sitting zip-tied in her kitchen. Attempted robbery, breaking and entering. They came for the artwork. The sheriff radioed for backup that couldn't arrive, surveyed the damage, and nodded slowly. "You've got grounds for charges. But Miss Carson, those vehicles blocking your driveway, they're not leaving. And I can't move them in this storm. You're stuck here until the weather breaks." "How long?" "Weather Service says 3 days minimum before the roads are safe." The sheriff's expression was sympathetic and exhausted. "Can you hold out that long?" Emma looked at Harold, at Derek, at the damage to her home. "Do we have a choice?" The next 72 hours tested every resource Emma had. The men in the vehicles outside kept pressure constant. Car horns at 3 a.m., threats shouted through megaphones, attempts to cut power that Harold countered with the generator Catherine had maintained. Tommy and Lily stayed in the safe room except for meals, emerging only when Emma or Harold personally retrieved them. Derek organized shifts with the other Frost Hollow volunteers who'd made it through before the roads closed. Someone always awake, always watching, always ready. Sarah Bennett arrived on the second day with food she'd somehow sourced despite the storm, refused to leave, established herself in the kitchen like a wartime field commander, organizing supplies. On the third morning, the snow stopped. Within 6 hours, state police arrived with plows and enough authority to arrest the remaining contractors still blockading the property. Federal agents followed. Agent Torres, with a team that processed evidence, took statements, documented everything. Torres pulled Emma aside while Lily and Tommy finally played in the snow, their laughter strange and beautiful after days of siege. We found communications between Aldrich and these contractors. He orchestrated this from jail through his lawyer, who's now also under investigation. The charges we already had, they just became attempted kidnapping, home invasion, conspiracy. He's not getting bail again. Emma felt the weight she'd been carrying for weeks finally shift. It's really over? The criminal part is. Torres studied the mansion, the damage, the volunteer guards still watching from the carriage house. But Miss Carson, you understand what you've done here? You didn't just stop one man. You exposed a network that's been operating for 40 years. There are families across 3 continents who are going to get their heritage back because you were brave enough to stand when everyone told you to fold. Emma thought about Rachel Goldstein's tears, about the Leonardo sketch waiting to find its rightful place, about Catherine's 45 years of isolation and regret. I'm just finishing what my great-aunt started. She deserved better than dying alone with all these secrets. She deserved to know someone would complete her mission. Torres smiled. She chose right. Your daughter's remarkable, too. The evidence she found into that council meeting, that's what cracked this whole investigation open. You're raising someone who understands that courage isn't about never being afraid. It's about acting despite the fear. The phrase settled into Emma's chest, something worth holding on to, something Lily needed to hear when she was old enough to understand the full scope of what they'd survived. By March, the physical repairs were complete, but the real work was just beginning. Emma had returned 11 pieces now, traveled to museums and private homes and quiet meetings where families wept over reclaimed fragments of lives stolen by war and time. Each return generated press coverage that brought more families forward, more questions, more connections between Catherine's collection and the broader network of looted artwork still scattered across the world. The Leonardo sketch proved most challenging. The Rosselli family line had ended in Europe, but Emma's research, aided by Lily's surprising facility with genealogy software, uncovered a distant cousin in Buenos Aires. Lucia Rosselli, 87 years old, living in a small apartment with photographs on every wall. Emma called, introduced herself, explained about the sketch. Lucia's response was immediate and fierce. My grandfather painted our villa before the war. I have his canvas. If your sketch shows that villa, it proves my family existed before fascism erased us. 3 weeks later, Emma and Lily flew to Argentina. Emma's first international trip, Lily's first time on an airplane. They met Lucia in her apartment filled with memory, laid the Leonardo sketch on her kitchen table beside the grandfather's painting. The villa's distinctive turret, the cypress trees lining the approach, the angle of afternoon light. Everything matched. Lucia touched the sketch with trembling fingers, tears streaming down weathered cheeks. This hung in our library. My grandfather told me stories about Da Vinci's workshop, about how art survives when everything else burns. I thought it was lost like everything else we owned. Lily, who'd been quiet through the whole meeting, stepped forward with the directness only children possess. It's not lost anymore. We found it. And now everyone will know your family was real, that they mattered, that they loved beautiful things. Lucia pulled Lily into a hug, then turned to Emma. What will you do with it? It's worth millions. You could keep it, sell it, tell no one about me. Emma shook her head. It belongs in Florence at the Uffizi Gallery. But the placard, will tell your family's story. The Rosselli family, who owned it, your grandfather who painted the villa, what happened during the war. Your family won't be forgotten, and the Italian government will provide compensation. Not enough, never enough, but something. Lucia reached into a drawer, pulled out a worn sketchbook. These are my grandfather's drawings, from before everything ended. Take them. Let the museum have them too. Let people see what we built, what we lost, what matters more than money or power or even survival. She opened the book to a sketch of a child. Herself, Emma realized, at maybe 6 years old, before war taught her what loss meant. Let them know we were more than victims. We were people who created beauty and valued truth. The return to Vermont felt different, carrying Lucia's sketchbook in the weight of completed obligation. Emma had fulfilled what Catherine couldn't. Given the Leonardo its proper context, ensured the Rosselli family's story survived their annihilation. 5 more pieces remained to restitute, 3 already promised to museums, 2 still awaiting verification of ownership. But the mansion itself had transformed during their absence. Derek and Sarah had organized volunteers, started converting the 3rd floor into exhibition space. Harold had overseen construction of a climate-controlled archive room. The town of Frost Hollow, seeing what Emma was building, voted to provide tax incentives for the project, declared the property a cultural heritage site. The Catherine Hartwell Center for Cultural Preservation took shape through summer and fall. Emma hired Elena Vasquez, a museum curator from Boston, who believed in restitution over profit. She brought on Dr. Sarah Chen, an expert in cultural property law, who'd been following Emma's work with growing admiration. James Thornton from the Library of Congress agreed to design archival protocols, moved his family to Vermont for the project. The mansion's bones stayed the same. Catherine's presence lingering in the preserved 1st floor, the library where she'd spent decades reading, the study where she'd wrestled with impossible choices. But the 2nd floor became research facilities, offices, conservation labs. The 3rd floor housed exhibitions about Catherine's war service, the Monuments Men program, the ongoing global effort to repatriate looted artwork. Emma's favorite addition was the 4th floor attic itself, kept exactly as she'd found it. The empty chest sat in that shaft of sunlight, a monument to the weight of secrets in the freedom of letting go. Visitors could see where Catherine had hidden her burden, understand the isolation of carrying truth alone, recognize the power of completing someone else's mission. Lily contributed the idea for the children's wing, interactive exhibits where kids could become art detectives, trace provenance, learn about cultural heritage through games and puzzles. Tommy helped design it, the 2 of them spending hours planning activities that taught serious concepts through play. By September, Frost Hollow had changed too. The center employed 23 locals: security, maintenance, education, administration, conservation. Derek's bookstore thrived with tourists seeking books on art history and World War II. Sarah's library received grants to digitize local historical documents. The diner expanded hours to accommodate visitor traffic. A coffee shop opened on Main Street, then a small gallery featuring regional artists. The population ticked upward, 931, then 967, then crossing 1,000 as young families discovered that Frost Hollow offered something rare. Community built around shared purpose, a place where helping others mattered more than individual gain. Emma's mother visited in October, the first time Sarah had come to Vermont, the first time she'd met Lily in person, despite 9 years of granddaughtering. They stood together in the mansion's foyer, Sarah's expression cycling through shock, grief, understanding. I was wrong about Catherine. Sarah's voice cracked with decades of estrangement. I thought she abandoned us for nothing, but she was serving something bigger than family, bigger than herself. I couldn't see that. I was too angry about what I'd lost to see what she was protecting. Emma took her mother's hand. You taught me resilience, Mom. How to survive when everything's falling apart. How to keep going when there's no good options. I needed that. Lily needs that. We're standing here because you showed me how to be strong. You were always strong. Sarah looked at Lily, who was showing Tommy something on her tablet across the room. But your daughter taught you how to be brave. There's a difference. Strength is surviving. Bravery is choosing to fight for something beyond survival. The words resonated, settled into understanding that felt like reconciliation. 3 generations, Sarah who'd survived poverty through grit, Emma who'd built stability through caution, Lily who'd found purpose through courage, each teaching the others what they'd learned through different kinds of hardship. They spent 3 days together, Sarah cooking in Catherine's kitchen, telling stories about her own mother, Emma's grandmother, who'd been Catherine's sister and had died still angry about the choices Catherine made. Sarah pulled out photographs Emma had never seen, letters that showed the family Catherine had left behind wasn't just bitter, but heartbroken. She wrote to Mother every month for 40 years. Sarah spread the letters across the dining room table, tried to explain, to justify, to apologize. Mother burned most of them without reading. I kept these few I found after she died. She laid her hand on the stack. Catherine wasn't running from us. She was trying to protect something she thought mattered more than her own happiness. I spent my life hating her for that choice. Now I see you making similar choices, and I'm terrified you'll end up alone like she did. Emma pulled Lily close as the girl appeared beside her. But I'm not alone. I have Lily. I have Harold and Derek and Sarah Bennett, and this whole town that showed up when things got dangerous. Catherine was alone because she thought she had to be. I'm choosing connection over isolation. Purpose with community, not instead of it. Sarah nodded, wiped tears. You're wiser than I ever was, than Catherine was too, for all her education and wartime heroics. You figured out what took me 70 years to learn. You can't save the world alone. You need people, family, even when they're imperfect and scared and don't always understand. The museum opened October 15th, Catherine's birthday, the date that felt most appropriate. Over 500 people attended, far more than Frost Hollow could accommodate. They came from everywhere: art historians, restitution advocates, families who'd recovered lost heritage, journalists documenting the story. Emma stood at the podium in the third-floor exhibition hall, Lily beside her in a dress they'd picked out together, and looked over the crowd. Her prepared speech disappeared from her mind, replaced by something more essential. Catherine Hartwell spent 45 years protecting 17 pieces of stolen artwork. She thought her job was preservation, keeping these pieces safe until someone smarter could decide their fate. But her real gift wasn't the artwork or the money or even this house. Her real gift was showing us what happens when we carry burdens alone, when we confuse preservation with possession, when we let fear of making mistakes prevent us from doing anything at all. Emma paused, found Rachel Goldstein in the crowd. A year ago, I was broke, invisible, cataloging documents nobody cared about in a basement nobody visited. Then Catherine handed me a fortune and a mission, and I was terrified because I had no idea what I was doing. I still don't most days, but my daughter taught me something Catherine never learned. You don't have to know everything before you start. You just have to care about the right things and trust people to help you figure out the rest. She gestured to the exhibits around them. This center exists because Catherine was brave enough to gather evidence, because Lily was brave enough to expose corruption, because Harold and Derek and Sarah were brave enough to defend us when we were under siege, because families across 3 continents were brave enough to share their stories of loss and survival. We built this together. That's what makes it matter. The crowd stood, applause washing over Emma like a wave. She found Lily's hand, squeezed it, felt her daughter squeeze back. They'd done it. They'd finished Catherine's mission and built something beyond what Catherine had imagined. Not just a collection returned, but a space created, a community rebuilt, a purpose discovered. Agent Torres approached after the ceremony with news that made Emma's victory complete. Aldrich pleaded guilty to all charges. 28 years in federal prison, $47 million in restitution, his entire network dismantled. The families he victimized are getting their pieces back. You stopped someone who would have kept destroying lives for decades more. Emma watched Lily and Tommy running through the exhibition hall, laughing as they showed visitors the children's detective stations they designed. They didn't stop him. We did. That's the whole point. One person can't do this. Not Catherine, not me, not anyone. It takes everyone choosing to care more about what's right than what's easy. 3 months later, on Christmas Eve, exactly 1 year after Robert Mitchell's phone call had changed everything, Emma stood in the mansion's foyer watching snow fall through the windows. The house glowed with lights Harold had strung, with people gathered for the town's holiday party, with the warmth of purpose fulfilled and community embraced. Lily appeared at her side, leaning against her the way she'd done since she was small. Best year ever, Mom. Emma pulled her close, thought about everything they'd survived, the threats, the siege, the pressure to abandon their mission. Yeah, baby. Best year ever. You know what the best part is? Lily looked up with those green eyes that saw everything clearly. It's not the mansion or the museum or even giving the art back. It's that we did it together. You and me and Harold and Tommy and everyone. Catherine was alone and it made her sad. We're together and it makes us strong. Emma's throat tightened. When did you get so wise? I learned from you. Lily grinned. You're the one who taught me that money doesn't matter as much as doing right. That some things are too important to own. That letting go is how you hold on to what really matters. The words echoed Catherine's letter, the lesson Emma had needed a year to understand. She thought about the archivist she'd been, broke, invisible, marking time in someone else's basement. She thought about the person she'd become, director of a foundation, guardian of restituted heritage, part of something larger than herself. But mostly she thought about her daughter, who'd found clues and exposed corruption and showed courage Emma hadn't known she possessed. Lily had been the catalyst, the one who'd pushed Emma to act when fear would have frozen her, the one who'd shown that bravery wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision to move forward despite it. Harold approached with Tommy, both of them carrying mugs of Sarah's famous hot chocolate. You two ready for midnight? We're doing fireworks over the pond if the snow stops. Lily bounced with excitement. Can Tommy and I light some sparklers? Under supervision. Harold's stern look dissolved into fondness. You two earned celebration. What you built here, what you all built, it matters. People will come to this center for decades, learning about Catherine's work, understanding what was stolen and what was recovered. That's legacy worth protecting. Emma looked around the room at Derek organizing cookie distribution, at Sarah directing the children's choir, at her mother helping Maggie prepare food in the kitchen, at the volunteers who'd defended them during the siege, now celebrating success they'd all earned together. This was what inheritance really meant, not the mansion or the money or the artwork, though those had provided tools. The real inheritance was of understanding that some burdens become lighter when you're brave enough to share them. That preservation means letting go, not holding on. That family isn't just blood, but the people who show up when the world tries to break you. The clock struck midnight. Fireworks exploded over the frozen pond, gold and silver against black sky, and Lily cheered with Tommy and the other children, their joy innocent and hard-won and perfect. Emma stood at the window holding her daughter close, surrounded by community they'd built from fragments and desperation and choices that prioritized purpose over comfort. Catherine had lived in this house for 45 years, alone with secrets that slowly suffocated her. Emma had lived here 1 year, and every room echoed with laughter and shared meals and the daily work of repairing what war and greed had broken. Same walls, same bones, different heart beating inside them. Sarah appeared at Emma's shoulder, slipped an arm around her waist. Your great-aunt would be proud. More than proud. She'd be amazed. You took her failure and turned it into something beautiful. It wasn't her failure. Emma watched the fireworks reflect in Lily's delighted face. She gathered evidence, made connections, protected pieces until someone could finish what she started. She didn't fail. She just ran out of time. We got to complete her story. That's a gift most people never receive, knowing their work didn't die with them. The party continued into morning, people staying until exhaustion finally drove them home through plowed streets and clearing skies. Emma and Lily collapsed on the study couch, Lily's head in Emma's lap, both of them too tired to climb the stairs to proper beds. Mom? Lily's voice was sleepy, content. What happens now? Emma thought about the 5 remaining pieces awaiting restitution, about the families still searching for lost heritage, about the center's planned expansion into educational programs and traveling exhibitions. The work never ends, honey. There's always more history to preserve, more stories to tell, more justice to serve. But that's okay, right? Because we're not alone anymore. Emma stroked her daughter's hair, felt gratitude so intense it ached. Yeah, baby, that's more than okay. That's everything. They fell asleep there as dawn broke over Vermont mountains. Mother and daughter curled together in a house that had once held isolation but now held hope. The empty chest sat 3 floors above them in the attic, testament to secrets released and burdens shared. Catherine's journals filled shelves in the archive, her letters displayed in exhibitions, her story finally complete. Emma Carson had arrived 1 year ago broke and desperate, expecting nothing more than temporary shelter from poverty. She'd found instead a mission that transformed her from invisible cataloger to guardian of cultural memory. But more importantly, she'd found community that proved family was built, not born, constructed from shared purpose and mutual protection and the daily choice to care about each other's survival. The mansion had been Catherine's prison, the place where she'd hidden from choices too heavy to bear alone. Emma had turned it into something different, a center radiating truth and healing, a space where isolation transformed into connection, where one woman's paralysis became a community's purpose. Letting go, Emma had learned, wasn't loss. It was trust. Trust that others would carry what you couldn't shoulder alone. Trust that completing someone else's mission honored their sacrifice. Trust that some things mattered more than wealth, more than security, more than anything except the love between a mother and daughter who'd saved each other from invisibility. Outside, the world continued its patient work of winter. Snow fell and melted, covering and revealing an endless cycle. The Hartwell mansion stood solid through it all, no longer monument to isolation but beacon of possibility, proof that burdens shared become lighter, that preserved history demands release, that courage isn't something you possess but something you choose, again and again, until the choosing itself becomes who you are. Emma opened her eyes as Lily stirred beside her, morning light streaming through windows Catherine had watched through for 45 solitary years. But the light felt different now, warmer somehow, reflecting off walls that held laughter and purpose instead of secrets and regret. Ready for today? Emma brushed hair from Lily's forehead. Her daughter smiled, eyes bright with the particular certainty of children who've survived fear and discovered their own strength. Ready for everything, Mom. We can do anything now. We already proved it. And she was right. They'd survived siege and corruption, stood against power that tried to crush them, chosen justice over fortune when everyone said they were fools. They'd taken a dying town and revived it, a hidden collection and freed it, a lonely woman's legacy and completed it. Most importantly, they'd done it together. Mother and daughter, community and stranger, past and present united in the understanding that some inheritances are meant to be given away, that preservation means release, that the strongest walls are built not from stone, but from trust. The Catherine Hartwell Center for Cultural Preservation would stand for decades, teaching future generations about wartime theft and restitution, about the long shadow of the Holocaust and the patient work of recovery. Families would come seeking lost heritage. Researchers would uncover forgotten stories. Children would learn that history mattered not because it was past, but because it shaped who they could become. But the real legacy, the one that mattered most, wasn't carved in stone or documented in archives. It was carried forward in the lessons Lily had learned, that courage meant acting despite fear, that some things were worth fighting for regardless of cost, that one person's unfinished work could become another's purpose. Emma stood, stretched, looked at her daughter still rubbing sleep from her eyes. Come on, baby. We've got families to help, history to preserve, a world to prove we're not just survivors, but builders of something better. Lily jumped up, energy returning instantly the way only children's energy could. Can Tommy come help today? Emma smiled. Of course, he's part of this team now. We all are. They climbed the stairs together, hand in hand, ready for another day of the work Catherine had started, and they would continue until other hands took it from theirs. The inheritance wasn't finished because it would never be finished. History always needing guardians, justice always requiring advocates, truth always demanding witnesses willing to stand when standing meant sacrifice. But they'd learned what Catherine never had, that standing together meant no one fell alone, that shared purpose made impossible tasks merely difficult, that the greatest inheritance was teaching the next generation to care about something larger than themselves. The mansion settled around them with familiar creaks, a living thing full of memory and promise. Catherine's ghost had finally found peace, her mission completed by the great niece who'd learned that letting go meant holding on to what truly mattered. Not the artwork or the fortune, but the understanding that we're all just temporary guardians of history. Our job not to own it, but to protect it long enough to pass it safely to those who come after. Emma looked back once at the study where she'd spent a year learning to be brave, at Catherine's desk where impossible choices had paralyzed one woman and empowered another. Then she followed Lily upstairs toward whatever challenges the day would bring, knowing they'd face them the same way they'd faced everything, together, purposeful, certain that some things were worth more than safety. The inheritance was complete. The legacy had just begun.